Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Daughter refuses to go to school, so I changed the Wi-Fi password. After that, am I the jerk for sending my niece to go live with her other uncle? And after that, bully your flatmate? I'll ruin your fun. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen gets the Wi-Fi password changed on her. What, you think I don't know how to use Ethernet or something? So please smash that like button. And subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Daughter refuses to go to school, so I changed the Wi-Fi password. My 17-year-old daughter, Kim, is going through a hard time with her mental health. It's gotten to a point where Kim refuses to go to school almost every single day. In January, she went to school 4 days total. We've been working with the school to allow Kim to get homework digitally, but she doesn't keep up with it. My wife and I have gotten her into therapy as well as counseling through her school last fall. But results of that have been mixed, as I don't think Kim is putting in the necessary work on her end. She is on medication, but we're still working with her doctor to find the right combination to meet her needs. If Kim had her way, she'd just spend all day in her bed with her laptop. She doesn't do anything to help around the house, doesn't work, doesn't go to school, doesn't eat meals with the family, just sits in her room on her computer all day and all night. We've tried so many different things, and nothing has seemed to make any positive change. It's infuriating and heartbreaking at the same time. One constant throughout all of this has been her computer and phone. She's on them constantly. No matter how many times we bring this up to her that maybe she needs to spend less time in front of a screen, she insists that isn't the cause of her problems. So finally, I decided to start changing our Wi-Fi password to one that only my wife and I know. I change it every night before we go to sleep, and I don't change it back to the one the kids know until after we get home from work. Kim was not happy about this and used up all of our family plan data in less than a week. We had to change our plan to restrict her usage. At first, my wife was on board with this, as she also felt that Kim was spending too much time on her phone and computer. But after Kim basically throwing a gigantic tantrum about it, my wife is not so sure. Kim tried to use the argument that if we want her to do schoolwork from home, she needs the internet, but she wasn't doing the work anyway, so that argument didn't really hold water for me. She tried saying that she needs the internet to have access to her support network, but we take her to therapy and counseling in person, and I feel if she put more effort into those, then maybe she would make some progress. Kim hates me for this and told me that restricting her internet access in this day and age is mistreatment. My wife is also wavering on this idea because Kim isn't showing any positive changes and she still isn't going to school. Every single day is an emotional roller coaster for me. Anger, frustration, embarrassment, futility, failure, fear. I know Kim is struggling, and seeing your kid go through something that you can't fix is horrible, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. All I'm trying to do is gently force Kim to focus on her issues and take steps necessary to address them and make progress towards being a functional adult. She has 3 acceptance letters to colleges that she's very unlikely to attend now. I'm leaning towards not the jerk, because this is an impossible situation and I really feel for all of you. It's very possible that your daughter's support network is online. It's also very possible that this is toxic and could be detrimental to her mental health. Without actually speaking with her, it's impossible to know. So that she's not held back with support and schoolwork, could you allow her Wi-Fi access with parental controls on it? If it were me, I'd be looking to block access to any potentially harmful material. It might be worth exploring with her and her therapist to find a way that she can use it for support, but in a healthy way, and ensure that she's not being bullied online or anything. More than anything though, you need to show her your unconditional love for her. Tell her you love her and often. Talk to her, and more than that, listen to what she says, both verbally and non-verbally. She sounds as if she might have pretty severe depression, so you need to show her that you're being supportive and not punishing her by removing her access to the internet, but protecting her from harm. Seek professional support for yourself too. You'll need someone to support yourself as you navigate through this together. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for changing the Wi-Fi password or not? Please let us know. I can't even deny it. I don't think I'd last a day without internet. Am I the jerk for sending my niece to go live with her other uncle? My sister-in-law passed 12 years ago, and my brother passed 4 years ago. They had a daughter who is 13 years old now. After my brother passed, both me and my sister-in-law's brother tried to adopt my niece, but as my niece didn't have much of a relationship with her mom's family, I was obviously the better option, so I ended up adopting her. Recently, my niece has got this very annoying habit that whenever we have a disagreement, she says she would rather go and live with her other uncle. I know she doesn't mean it because 1, she barely knows her other uncle, and 2, I have a high-paying job and I'm able to provide things that most people aren't able to provide, so she's too spoiled to be able to live with anyone else. About a week ago, it happened again. She told me she wants to go live with her other uncle. This time, I told her to go pack a bag. She went to her room. An hour later, I went up to her room and I asked her if she's ready. She said she didn't mean what she had said and doesn't really want to go. I told her that she should go anyway. She'll stay for a week and then she can tell me if she wants to stay there or come back home. She insisted that she already knows where she wants to stay, but I told her to get in the car and I drove her there. After a week, I called and asked if she wanted to come home, and she said yes. However, she hasn't been talking to me. My family heard what happened, and now everyone is mad at me and thinks I'm a jerk. Edit. I decided to make an edit and let you know how things are going. We decided to have a conversation about it. I asked her how they treated her, and she told me that while her uncle was nice, her aunt made her feel unwelcome, and she didn't feel good about being there, and she doesn't want to live with them, and she thinks I was a jerk for sending her even after she apologized. I apologized and told her that even if she wanted to live with them, I would still bring her back home because I love her too much and can't live without her, so she's stuck with me. She has some conditions for forgiving me. For example, she's forcing me to binge watch shows with her, and she wants a daddy-daughter day, and I'm guessing that I'm not going to like any of her plans based on the evil grin on her face, but I'll do whatever makes her happy. There were a lot of not the jerk votes. While I'm thankful, I don't agree with them. I was definitely being a jerk. She was just being a typical teenager. I had this upbringing. I was adopted by relatives who would pull this, "I don't have to keep you here," anytime I was a normal bratty adolescent. Now I have abandonment issues. You're the jerk. Stop pawning your bad kids that you're raising on other people in hopes that it will teach them a lesson. Talk to them. Deal with the hard parts. Get them in therapy if you need or want to. They're just kids, but they're learning from you and it's your job to raise them. My goodness, I get so sad reading these types of posts. Why is it that everyone here thinks OP is at blame? The OP never threatened the niece by sending her away. Read what was written and comprehend. OP's niece, who he adopted and brought into his home, asked to leave and go live with her other uncle. He didn't pawn her off, he obliged with her request. You're making OP out to be something he's not, and making OP think he did a bad job. This niece was the one threatening and wanting to leave in order to hurt the OP. OP showed her the grass on the other side for a week. OP is not the jerk here. The niece wanted to mess around and find out. I doubt she will say anything about living with her other uncle again. The niece was being a 13-year-old, whose parents are literally both gone. 13-year-olds say the dumbest things all the time. You don't take them seriously, and you sure don't send them away. It's called being an adult and realizing that a kid is acting like a kid. Also, generally speaking, kids don't mess around and find out with adults. You know, because adults should be better than that. More mature than that. Emphasis on should here, because clearly in OP's case, they very much aren't better than that and would rather ship off their 13-year-old niece than sit down and try to figure out exactly why she's saying this stuff in the first place. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his niece? Please let us know. You mean OP is trying to teach his niece that her actions have consequences? And that it's not a good idea to say things you don't mean in order to manipulate other people? Oh, how could he do such a thing? Bully your flatmate? I'll ruin your fun. I work in student halls of residence for a smallish campus-based university in the UK. This involves malicious compliance after a group of students had been bullying one of their flatmates. I'll call her Sarah, and happened within the last 10 years. Sarah was neurodivergent and had plenty of interests. None of these interests involved going out partying. She preferred to live in a quieter, cleaner environment. The other four all had similar interests to each other. Very typical first-year in-hall stuff. There were kitchen parties after clubbing at 3 a.m., alleged usage of things they shouldn't have been using, post-party leaving strangers passed out on the kitchen floor, empty bottles everywhere, and piles of rubbish and washing up. Generally messy. Normally, a student would report this. We give out contact details that can be used for anonymous reporting, or we'd offer flat meetings to help them find compromises, like agreeing to limiting parties to a certain number of times a week, or checking with each other before planning one in case someone has a big deadline and needs quiet on a specific night, cleaning rotations, etc., and the cleaners could issue fines if it was a mess on weekly cleaning day. But Sarah was terrified of reporting anything and found interacting with staff very difficult. We only knew there was an issue because she would tell her mom, and her mom would tell us. We had offered a swap, but she told her mom that she didn't want to move as it would disrupt her routine and it wasn't fair for her to be punished when she had followed the rules. So we were working with her and her mom to try and get her to the point where she could formally report it, referring her to well-being services and doing random flat checks at night to see if we could catch the students doing things they shouldn't have been. This carried on until term 2, and by then, the 4 had already clearly decided that they just didn't like her and thought that she was weird. The inconsiderate behavior had escalated to bullying. She'd recorded them calling her some horrible names and played it back to us, but again refused to send us the recording and wouldn't formally report it. I appreciate she wasn't helping herself, but I don't think she was being deliberately difficult. She just really struggled with certain things. Her flatmates had definitely figured out what pushed her buttons. We were trying to mediate, flat meetings, trying to enable her to feel safe in reporting their behavior formally, etc. But it was obvious to staff that they wanted to push her to move out, and they had a friend who was always hanging out in their kitchen who clearly wanted to move in. One day, she must have snapped, and she threw a glass across the room, causing it to smash on a wall. It didn't hit anyone, but they jumped on this, and all their parents were on the phone about how their daughters were living with someone dangerous. At this point, we have no evidence of their bullying or breaches of their tenancy, but they have evidence against her and had all en masse filed reports. We have no choice but to move her. Here comes the malicious compliance. Not even before we had sent cleaners into her old room, we start getting requests for the friend to move in. Apparently, a supportive person would help with the trauma, and someone else in the room would give them closure. The idea of them getting their way in this manner infuriated me. Instead, we asked one of our older and more experienced resident advisors, a final year student, if they could move in. This is someone they would not be able to bully and had a good idea about what had been really going on in that flat. It was a nice flat in a very new building, so it was a bit of a perk for them as well. The best bit was the parents ringing to complain about how we had moved a stranger in and how upset their daughters were. When I explained we had put a very experienced resident advisor in there who had training in peer support, all their arguments collapsed. The requirements, supportive person and room relet for closure. Tick and tick. Sorry, no more crazy parties for your daughters this year. P.S. Sarah didn't have any further action taken against her for the glass throwing. She did actually get some additional well-being involvement, and it was deemed that the move was penalty enough, an incident unlikely to reoccur. She loved her new flat. It was a single occupancy studio in a really nice building, and we kept her on lower rent. Her mom said the studio was perfect as she could control the mess, and no one moved her stuff. She felt safe. She actually rebooked a studio for the following year and did go to finish her degree. I have no idea what happened to the other students. I hope they look back and reflect on what they did, but sadly, part of me doubts it. At any rate, given we had ruined their party venue, I hope they managed to get some studying done. Am I the jerk for refusing to get a job and pay rent at my parents' house? I had my 18th birthday 3 days ago. On the day after my birthday, my stepdad told me he wants me to start paying rent to live in his house. My stepdad is quite Christian and conservative. I don't expect to live rent-free here forever, but I know my stepdad is coming from a spiteful place. He and my mom have 2 kids and 9 years of marriage. I'm not his own, and it's clear that I'm a reminder that his wife was a divorced woman before him. So of course I'm being treated like a guest, and my mom is allowing it. He doesn't need my money to pay rent. Plus, I don't have much, and he wants £100 per month. We still have lots of time for this, but I bet his kids won't be paying rent while they're in school. My A-level exams, UK school system, start in mid-April and last up till July. I'm doing STEM subjects, and I'm hoping to fulfill my offer for a medicine course at a good university. I'm aiming for 4A, which will take a lot of studying, and if I have to get a job, it will be difficult to maintain that level of studying that I need to. I'm literally moving out in September. I don't know if the university finances differ in the US, and I know this platform is predominantly American. So in the UK, uni is funded by loans, and these loans cover everything and are 100% my responsibility, and my parents won't be financing anything. So it honestly just feels vindictive. And it's not like I'm unproductive. I'm trying to save the money I had left from my last job for when I move out too, and paying my stepdad £800 when he doesn't need it feels spiteful, and like he's punishing me and making my life harder for being born. Basically, my aunt, Mom's sister, who isn't fond of him, said he's being ridiculous and told me to come live with her. Her house is an hour away, but my school is in the middle, 30 minutes each way if that makes sense. She said she has a guest room free so I can save my money for uni. This benefits me most, so I took her up on the offer. My mom keeps crying that I'm leaving already, so my stepdad is annoyed. We got into an argument where he said he's just treating me like a tenant to prepare me for the real world, so I said, "Do tenants not have the right to leave?" Which annoyed him further. My stepdad says I'm hurting my mother and taking resources from my aunt because I'm too entitled to pay rent. This is just what's best for me. I said I'd visit. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Actions meet consequences. Your stepdad tried to flex on you, and his power play backfired. Your mother may be crying, but she let him do it. That house is half hers, and so is the decision to charge you rent. She's not blameless here. Your aunt's resources are none of your stepdad's business. OP, move out. Work hard to crush your exams and be super considerate and make yourself very useful in your aunt's household. Shovel the walk, do dishes, walk the dog, whatever's needed. And if you don't know, ask. Please don't come back to this house to visit if your stepdad is home, ever. Your mom can darn well find her way to your aunt's house without Mr. Flex on her arm. God bless your aunt for sheltering you from stepdad and his nonsense. And don't feel obliged to invite him to your graduations either. Can I speak to your manager? A few years ago, I worked as a cashier at a fast food restaurant. I don't eat fast food, so I don't know how it is with other places, but with this establishment, nothing was free. You want sauce with your tacos? That's 50 cents, please. Substitute your sour cream with guacamole? Sorry, you have to pay for that. You want ranch with your salad? That'll be extra. All of these prices were very prominently displayed on a giant menu in the middle of the lobby, by the way. Now, I was paid minimum wage. I, nor any of the other cashiers, would give a darn about all of that. It also made the prices ridiculous, as a lot of customers naturally wanted add-ons, so usually we wouldn't charge for most of those things. But we could only get away with that when our manager was not out in the front, as she was the strict type, yell at you in front of the customers for giving away a free sauce type. On a slow day, an older woman walked in and ordered a salad. By the time it got to the register, she loaded it with a bunch of extras. To be completely honest, there was no rhyme or reason to what I chose to charge people for. It really depended on my mood. Her salad was pretty accessorized, so I felt like I had to charge for something. But I was having a good day, so I just rang her up for the salad and extra guacamole, and that's all. It was something like $12.50. She immediately started to complain about the price. I explained to her that it was $11.50 for the salad and $1 for the guac. That's ridiculous. It shouldn't cost that much just for a salad. Even $11 is way too much. I'm sorry, ma'am, but that's the price on the menu. Why did you raise the price so high? A salad should not cost that much. I tried to explain to her that I was just a cashier, and I did not, in fact, control the menus, but she would have none of it and only grew increasingly rude. Then she dropped the classic dreaded line, "Can I speak to your manager?" I hesitated, looked her in the eye, and said, "You don't want to do that." "No, get your manager, right now." So I went to the back and told my manager that there was a customer who wanted to speak with her. She came to the register with me, looked at the salad, looked at what I rang up, and immediately started going off about how I didn't add the salsa, the chips, the house dressing. I was used to this, so I just stood there and stared at the customer as my manager screamed at me. The customer stared back, dumbfounded, as my manager took over the register, corrected the order, and left without acknowledging her at all. The salad came out to be $16.50. The woman paid and left without another word. Am I the jerk for not taking my stepkids to Disneyland with me and my disabled son? Disneyland has this thing where people with disabilities get different treatments with regards to lines. It works out great for us. My wife has 2 kids from before. They also love Disneyland. When we go as a family, we get faster access to some rides together, and when they want to go on a ride that he doesn't like, my wife can wait in line with them and we meet up afterwards. Sometimes we switch, and my wife will take my son around while I wait in line with my stepkids. However, when my wife or one of my sisters can't come with us, I just take my son. My wife has also taken just her kids when my son doesn't want to go. We've also taken just my stepkids and left my son with my sisters when he didn't feel like going out in public. This last weekend, I had time to go to the park and my son asked. I asked my wife, but she didn't want to go. I checked with my sisters, but they were too busy, so I took my son without my stepkids. When we got home, my in-laws were there fighting with my wife. The kids had called them and said I was excluding them from going to Disneyland. The thing is, they never volunteer to watch the kids when they go. They hate the crowds and the lines. They said that I'm treating their grandkids like they're less important than my son. My wife, who was dealing with a migraine, was almost in tears. I helped my son get cleaned up and put him to bed. Then I came back and tore a strip off of them. I said that their grandkids are just kids and they don't understand yet why they cannot always get their way, but that they are adults and presumably are able to understand why I couldn't take 3 kids by myself. I couldn't leave my son, and my stepkids are too young to wander the park by themselves. I volunteered to take them next time so they could watch their grandkids while I took care of my son. Or they could watch my son and I would wait in line with the kids. They said they didn't want to do that, but still said that I was being a jerk for not taking their grandkids. So I presented another option. They could pay for a helper to come with us for the day. That way, if my wife can't come, I can still take the kids. I did ask that they also pay for the days I could not go, so my wife could take all 3 kids. They said that I was being ridiculous, so I told them unless they were willing to help, they could stay out of how we do things in our family. I went and talked to the 3 kids, and I told them that I understood why they called their grandparents, but that they had to learn that sometimes they would have to not go to stuff until they were old enough to be safe by themselves. I made sure they knew I wasn't mad at them and said that I would take them the next time I could schedule it. My wife said I was right in how I handled stuff, but that her parents were mad at me for putting them in their place. Sounds like you and your wife are doing everything right. So nice to read about a couple in a blended family who have each other's backs for once. Wishing you a very long and happy marriage and a happy, healthy family. Your in-laws can buzz off. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk? I quit while in the midst of moving my mother-in-law. It rained overnight and ruined everything I had left outside. Backstory. My mother-in-law lived 4 hours from our city. Last year, she decided to sell her house and move near my family. She recently closed on another house here as her house was under contract. My wife stayed home, overseeing some work being done on the new house while also painting. Myself and our daughter, who's 6, went down to my mother-in-law's house to get her moved out. My mother-in-law is the type of lady that exalts males on a glorified pedestal. Over the years, she's made numerous inappropriate remarks about my body build or my appearance. She even has gone as far as asking very personal questions. Nonetheless, her mouth has gotten her in major trouble. With that said, when we arrived, she seemed to have been minding her manners at first. She made a comment to my daughter along the lines of, when she gets older, she should marry a man just like her father. Later that night, we had an argument. My kid did not eat dinner because she had a stomach ache. My mother-in-law demanded she help clean the kitchen and said I should be relaxing instead. My argument was, why should she have to clean up from dinner when she didn't even eat? The next morning, my daughter slept in a bit, which irritated my mother-in-law. She made a comment that my wife is lazy, and that's where her granddaughter gets it from. It ticked me off, considering all of the work my wife has been doing at her new house. An hour later, my daughter got out of bed. I was outside when my mother-in-law was putting socks on her and said, "Don't you ever get too big like your mother." I didn't know about that comment until the next day. As they were packing boxes, I overheard my mother-in-law telling my daughter that her mother didn't even want to have her. For the record, that's not true. It was my mother-in-law that was hounding my wife to not have her because she said my wife would blow up even bigger and that having kids ruins lives. My kid was upset and hurt. My instinct was to get her away from that environment. We got lunch and I took her to the beach to distract her mind. We spoke it over. I promised her what her grandmother had said was not true. I called my wife. She and our kids spoke for a while. It was while they were on the phone, the comment about her not getting big like her mother was brought to my attention. We went back to the house, I gathered our belongings, and we left. Outside sat several pieces of furniture and a few large boxes. My mother-in-law tried hiring movers after we left, but none were available. Overnight it rained, which ruined everything. My brother-in-law called me a jerk for letting her furniture get ruined, also claimed it was mistreatment. Week later, I received a handwritten bill requesting $4,000 for the ruined furniture. My mother-in-law wrote how saddened she was to realize my wife had brainwashed and demasculinized me. The move occurred at the first of the year, Yesterday, I received an additional handwritten letter stating I will be sued if I do not pay for the damages. Not the jerk. That's wild. Your mother-in-law is a narcissist. Politely let her know you will deduct it from what she owes your wife and daughter, past and future, for therapy bills to deal with what she created by being awful. Also, she probably has homeowner's insurance. Iffy if that is coverable. Karen's stepdaughter demands I buy her a $60,000 car. I, 38 female, have a 16-year-old daughter. About 7 years ago, her dad and I divorced. Him being the only breadwinner and a high earner at that, and me being a housewife, he preferred to let us live in the house, a big one in a gated community, and continued paying all of our expenses and giving me spending money to maintain my lifestyle. 2 years later, I met my current husband. A year later, we married, and he moved in with me and my daughter. Him and my ex are great friends, especially since my ex is still very much a part of our life. Also, as a wedding gift, he gave me half of the house. Now I own it in full. My husband has a daughter with his ex. They have shared custody, and she lives with us half of the time. The problem is that my ex pays for our daughter to go to a really expensive private school, buys her expensive gifts, and for her birthday, he bought her a $60,000 car. My husband can't afford the same for his daughter. My daughter and her stepsister do not have the best relationship, mainly because my husband's ex hoped that they would be getting back together and keeps influencing her daughter. My daughter used to share her stuff until her stepsister started ruining them on purpose. That was when my husband made a rule that they can't borrow from each other. I stay out of it since she refuses to see me as a parent, and I won't force her. My husband has a good job, but nothing close as to what my ex earns, and since we both decided that this house is enough help from my ex, our income is just what he earns, which in my opinion is more than enough. Now my stepdaughter's 16th birthday is coming up, and she asked for the exact same car that my ex gave my daughter. We refused, of course, and said we would buy her a gift that fits our budget. She threw a tantrum and threatened my husband that she would never talk to him again if he didn't get her the same car. He is wavering, but I refuse. $60,000+ is just under what he makes a year. It will drown us in debt. We are still paying off his student loans and some medical debt he has. But on the other hand, he loves his daughter a lot, and I feel partly responsible since she wouldn't have asked for it if my daughter didn't get the car for her birthday. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your ex bought your daughter the car, right? So tell your stepdaughter that her mother can buy her a car to make it equal. You can't have a 5 out of 5 in all categories 2 years in a row. These were the words my HR said to my manager when he put in my annual performance review for this past year. To explain a little background, I work in a niche part of research agriculture. I'm good at my job, I do it well, and everywhere I've went, I've made myself extremely hard to replace. Basically, I'm good at what I do and it reflects. My manager is very open with me. He is the most transparent manager I've ever had, and in fact, he shares with me certain details that I'm not supposed to know, such as salary raises, bonuses, stupid things that HR says to him in an email. After another great year of research and proving myself invaluable, which not only included 2 raises, 25% salary bump altogether, a hefty bonus, title promotion, enrolled in a mentoring program, listed as an extremely high performer by upper management, and being put in charge of advancing several field technology advancement projects, basically incorporating new cutting-edge tech in the field of research, all while attending college. Company was sending me back for free. I figured I had done amazing for the year. Reports were done and filed. Everything from safety to EHS to the I's being dotted and T's crossed was done. I could not have finished the year any better. Now this was the end of my second year at this job. During my first year review, I had been marked as a 5 all around by my manager. There's something like 4 categories you can score in, impressing not only him, but several of the upper management seat holders as well as the company VP. That's what led to my promotion and raises. This last annual review, my manager was having issues submitting my review. After some emails back and forth with HR, he explained to me that HR had just informed him that nobody can have a 5 out of 5 in all categories 2 years in a row. Mark him as a 4 out of 5. This was the general synopsis of the email. So I did what I do best when I get petty. I asked my manager to forward me the email. Informed him that I was okay with the 4 out of 5 rating and that I don't expect him to try to fight HR on it. then let the process stew for a few weeks. After the reviews were finished and sent back, they were accompanied with AVIP projections for the next year, salary increases and bonuses, and what do you know? My percentages were marked lower because I had gone from a 5 out of 5 to a 4 out of 5. Since the report made it seem that my performance had lacked this year from the last because of my score, even though my actual performance never suffered, I was put in a lower category of AVIP, meaning less money for me, which wasn't gonna fly. I put together all of the report, the email from HR, as well as the input from both my manager and my peers that are included in my review, and emailed it to my VP, Director of Marketing, and Director of R&D. With my manager and HR CC'd, I wrote, "This is fairly summarized. Due to the failure of the company to recognize my growth as an individual and mark me as slipping backwards on a progressional chart when it was obvious I had not, I will henceforth begin taking an only 80% or 4/5 of the current workload I have been assigned. I have been absolutely committed to the work and projects I have been assigned. In fact, getting my station ahead on audits, various projects, and coming under budget for the second year in a row seems to have been overlooked when due diligence was observed for my annual review. All due to the fact that an employee cannot be a 5 out of 5 twice in a row. I believe it to be absurd that this is how my performance is graded when I have had no complaints or issues from my peers, customers, or managers throughout the year. In fact, being told the opposite. I will look forward to my performance review next year to see how HR determines my new score." I sent this on a Friday at 4 p.m. right before I left. I got an email Sunday evening from my VP with HR CC'd stating that my review had been changed. Monday morning, I had my new AVIP projections in my inbox. Sometimes you gotta go to bat for yourself. Edit. To everyone asking, yes, I did get permission from my manager to use his email in my email. He had advocated for me in the past and is all for personal growth. He has been known to butt heads with some people in the past, but as far as I've seen, there's been no retaliation towards him. The rule was one made by our parent company. The parent company has several thousand employees, while the company I work for only has around 150 employees nationwide, including the management team. I don't remember the exact number, but it's small. Many of the policies are adopted from our parent company, but in this few, my VP decided to ignore the rule. And to those who are claiming my story is fictitious, you're free to feel that way, but nothing about my profile nor my comments would otherwise point to me making up stories for karma or praise. Also, if you're being walked over at work or treated badly, stand up for yourself, learn to sell yourself, and refuse to take mistreatment from employers. Employers who mistreat their staff are not worth your time or your mental health. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.